They built the business together from nothing. Two best friends with a dream and $500 between them. 10 years later, one of them would walk away with everything, leaving the other with nothing but a choice that would define the rest of his life. This is the story of David and Marcus, and the betrayal that taught the world what true wealth really means. David and Marcus met in college, two broke students who shared the same vision. While others dreamed of finding jobs, they dreamed of creating them. They would stay up until 3 in the morning, sketching business plans on napkins, arguing about ideas with the kind of passion only true believers possess. After graduation, they made it official. With $250 each, their life savings, they registered their company, Build Right Construction. David was the visionary, always thinking 3 steps ahead, seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. Marcus was the executor, the one who turned dreams into reality, who knew every building code and could negotiate with suppliers like no one else. For 5 years, they struggled. There were months they couldn't pay themselves, weeks where they lived on instant noodles and black coffee, but they never gave up on each other. When David's car broke down, Marcus gave him rides for 6 months. When Marcus's father got sick, David covered his share of the expenses without asking for repayment. "We're brothers," David would say, "not by blood, but by choice. And that's stronger." The business began to grow. Small contracts became bigger ones. Their reputation spread. By year 7, they were billing $500,000 a year. By year 9, they had 20 employees and projects across 3 cities. They were living the dream they'd sketched on those college napkins. But success has a way of revealing who people really are. Marcus started arriving late to meetings. He bought a luxury car while the business account ran thin. David noticed small discrepancies in the books. Nothing major at first. A few thousand here, some unexplained expenses there. When he asked about it, Marcus always had an answer, always sounded reasonable. "You worry too much," Marcus would laugh. "This is how business works. Trust me." And David did trust him. That was his first mistake. The second mistake was ignoring the signs. The weekend trips Marcus took without explanation, the new business contacts he refused to introduce to David, the private meetings with their biggest clients that David wasn't invited to. Then came the day that changed everything. David arrived at the office to find the locks changed. The employees looked at him with confused expressions. Marcus was already inside, sitting at David's desk, a lawyer beside him. The partnership agreement they had signed 10 years ago, the one they'd drawn up themselves to save money on legal fees, had a loophole. Marcus had been secretly forming relationships with all their major clients. He'd registered a new company under a different name, and he'd legally maneuvered himself into a position where he could claim ownership of Build Right's assets. The lawyer handed David a single sheet of paper. It was an offer. Walk away quietly and receive nothing, or fight in court for years with no guarantee of winning. Marcus had drained the company's accounts. The real assets, the client relationships, were already gone. Marcus finally spoke, his voice cold and unfamiliar. "It's just business, David. Nothing personal." David stood there, looking at the man he'd called brother, and felt something break inside him that had nothing to do with money. For 3 months, David couldn't sleep. He spent his nights researching revenge. He found lawyers who specialized in partner disputes. He discovered Marcus had cut corners on several projects, violations that could cost him everything. David had evidence, emails, photos. He could destroy Marcus with a single call to the building inspector. The anger felt righteous. It felt deserved. He'd stolen 10 years of his life, his money, his trust. Didn't he deserve to pay? David sat in his apartment, now much smaller than the house he'd lost, finger hovering over his phone. One call. That's all it would take. But then he remembered something his grandmother had told him when he was young. Revenge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. He thought about what the next 5 years would look like if he made that call. Court battles, depositions. His energy poured into destroying Marcus instead of building something new. Even if he won, even if Marcus lost everything, would David have gained anything? Would he get back those 10 years? Would he get back his peace of mind? That night, David made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. He let it go. David started over with nothing but the lessons he'd learned. This time, he did things differently. He hired a real lawyer to structure his business properly. He watched for red flags in partnerships. He trusted people, but he also verified. Within 3 years, he'd built a new company, smaller but more solid. He chose partners based on character, not just capability. He created systems that prevented any single person from having too much control. Meanwhile, Marcus's empire began to crumble. Without David's vision and integrity, clients started leaving. The corners Marcus had cut came back to haunt him. Employees who'd watched him betray his partner had no loyalty when times got tough. Within 5 years, his company collapsed under the weight of lawsuits and bad reputation. But here's the surprising part of the story. When Marcus's business failed and he lost everything, when he was facing bankruptcy and legal troubles, David did something no one expected. He reached out and offered Marcus a job, not as a partner, not as an executive, but as a project manager with clear boundaries and oversight. Marcus, humbled and broken, asked him, "Why, after everything I did to you?" David replied simply, "Because holding on to anger would have cost me more than you ever stole. I chose to build my life, not destroy yours." Today, David's company is worth more than BuildRight ever was, but more importantly, he sleeps well at night. He taught the world a lesson that goes against everything we think we know about justice and revenge. The hidden cost of revenge isn't just the time and energy it consumes, it's the person you become in the process. It's the opportunities you miss while you're looking backwards instead of forwards. It's the prison you build in your own mind where the person who hurt you lives rent-free forever. David stole David's money and his business, but David refused to let him steal his peace, his character, or his future. In the end, forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was the most powerful business decision David ever made. Because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so meaningful that the past becomes irrelevant. What would you have done in David's position? Sometimes the hardest choice is the wisest one.